Elspeth here from Vegan News Daily. Today we're going to make a delicious summer flatbread with pesto and balsamic. This is a wonderful summer recipe to make because you can use a whole lot of things from your garden or from farmers markets. So the first thing we need to do is make the quinoa crust. I have my oven turned on and preheated to 425 degrees, and we need to make the batter to make the quinoa crust. So I did go ahead and soak some quinoa in water. So it's about 3/4 of a cup of quinoa that I've soaked, and you can use, I use the tricolor quinoa here. You can use the plain white one, whatever quinoa you have. I soaked in about 2 cups of water, and I probably did it first thing this morning, so it's been soaking for a while, but about 4 hours is all you need. So I'm going to go ahead and drain the quinoa. So I'll drain the water off and make sure I get out as much as I can because I don't want to leave any quinoa behind. And then I'm going to add this quinoa to the bowl of my blender. So I use a high-speed Vitamix blender. Drain that all out. So I'll just add the quinoa to my blender, and then I'm going to add 1/2 cup of water. So pre-measured 1/2 cup of water here. And I'm also adding 2 cloves of garlic. You can add more, and some oregano. If you don't like oregano, choose something else. You could use thyme, you could use herbes de Provence, or come up with any kind of herb combination that you like. And I'm just going to blend this together and make the batter. That should be good. So I have a nice thick batter going on here, and I've gone ahead and lined a baking sheet with some parchment paper. I find that it's better to make this flatbread crust using a baking sheet lined with parchment paper rather than the silicone baking mat. And what I also like to do, you don't have to do it at all, but I take a knife and I pop a knife on each end of, or any piece of cutlery, on each end of the parchment paper just to weigh it down so that the parchment stays nice and flat, so you don't end up with a non-flat flatbread. Well, it's not going to stay flat the whole time, but this helps it stay a little flatter. So I'm just going to go ahead and pour the batter out. I just pour it into the center of the baking sheet, and again I'll try and just scoop out as much of the batter as I can, so I'm not leaving anything behind. I love the smell of quinoa. It's really pretty. Okay, so then I just take the baking sheet and I tilt it from side to side and try and get a nice even layer. I'm going for a large oval shape or a rectangular shape here. So the main thing is that I want to have like an even thickness throughout this flatbread, because it's just going to be a whole lot easier to work with later. So tilt it from side to side, let the batter spread. Sorry, I'll show it to you. So that looks good enough. So I'm going to go ahead and pop this into the oven. So in it goes. 425 degrees. And I set the timer for 20 minutes. So at 20 minutes, we will check on it, and I'll take it out of the oven and then show you how I very carefully flip it over and then continue cooking it. So we'll take a little break right now, and we'll check back on it in 20 minutes. So we have the flatbread crust in the oven cooking for the first round, and so this is a good opportunity to make the pesto. Pesto is perfect for this time of year because most of our gardens are teeming with fresh basil. And some of us are lucky to be able to grow zucchini as well. So in this recipe, I need about a cup of zucchini, and you can just estimate, take like a medium to large zucchini, and you will need a food processor for this. You can make it in a blender, but you won't have as much control on the consistency of it. So I like a little bit of a chunky pesto, so I prefer to use a food processor. But if you don't have one, yes, go ahead and make it in a blender. Okay, so I take about 2 cups of fresh basil. Oh my gosh, it's amazing smelling. And I add that to the food processor. And I'm also going to add about a cup of fresh spinach. So this is going to add a little sweetness to this, and also an extra pop of green. It's just another opportunity to add greens to your food. And the nuts in this recipe, I'm using walnuts and pine nuts. If you don't like either of them, you can substitute them out. You could use hemp seeds. You could even use avocado if you didn't want to use any nuts at all. But this is a nice combination, pine nuts and walnuts. So I'll throw those in. And I also need some lemon juice. One of the tools that I constantly recommend to our dinner club members is this handheld citrus press. So I'm just going to estimate about 2 tablespoons or so of fresh lemon juice. That probably is enough. And then I need 3 or 4 cloves of garlic. You can never have too much garlic. I suppose you could, but I'm going to add 4 cloves. And the other ingredient is nutritional yeast. Nutritional yeast is going to give it that slightly cheesy flavor. In regular pesto, you often have some cheese, some Parmesan cheese or Romano. So I'm going to use the nutritional yeast here. And the salt-free seasoning that I use for this recipe is Benson's Table Tasty. You can use whatever salt-free seasoning you prefer, or if you do eat salt, you can use regular salt too. So I add that to the bowl of the food processor, and then I'm just going to pulse it a little bit, a few times. And then I want to stop sort of halfway through and just make sure that everything is going down into the bowl of the food processor. And I'll give it one more scrape around the edge. This is a Breville 12-cup food processor that I like to use, and it comes with this really great spatula that is perfect for this. Okay, that's probably about right. So this is the consistency that I have going on. You can see there's a few chunks in here. I could make it a little greener. I could put some arugula in here. I could put more spinach, but I like it just like this. And the way I store it is I just transfer it to one of these bowl jars, and I scrape it all in here. And I could just put the lid on this and have it in the refrigerator for a couple of weeks. It's going to stay really delicious, and I could use it on top of sandwiches or wraps or pizza or this flatbread. So today I'm going to show you how we use it on the flatbread. I did go ahead and make a crust of the flatbread in advance. And that's it for the pesto. So this is how the flatbread is going to turn out at the end. It's very crispy. I'm going to just break up a little piece here so you can hear it. So it is very crispy. It's like a cracker, which is, how we like our flatbread. You could let it cook a little less time and have it a little more pliable, but I don't know anybody who doesn't love a crispy flatbread. So let's check and see how the flatbread is doing in the oven and if it's ready to be turned over, and then we'll get back to this flatbread, which I'll go ahead and show you how I put the toppings on, and we'll talk more about what we did for that. Welcome back. So I need to check on the quinoa flatbread that's in the oven. So I'm going to pull that out. Wow, it looks great. So this is what it looks like at about 20 minutes. So just be aware that the knives that I put down on the board are going to be hot. So use a, whoops, that one's stuck. Use an oven mitt or something to remove the knives from the tray. This one looks like it got incorporated in with the batter. Oh well, no big deal, we'll just pop that off. Okay, so what I need to do now is flip over the parchment paper and then very carefully, very gently and very patiently I'm going to pull back the parchment from the flatbread and just encourage it to let go of the parchment paper. So I'm just going to work my way around, and I don't want to rip it off like a band-aid. I want to just keep working it so that I don't end up messing up the bottom of the crust. Looks like it's coming away quite easily. That's great. So I keep working my way around, and every time I meet resistance, I'll just do a quarter turn and work on another part. So don't get too overly confident here and say, oh well, it's all coming off, I'll rip it off, because you will end up with a whole lot of the crust attached to the parchment paper. So patience is encouraged. I'll just press it down, almost there. And it's going to be a little thicker in the middle and a little more pliable, so this is where you're going to run into problems potentially. But not today. So now I put my parchment paper back on the baking sheet. This is the side that was up before. I'm going to turn it upside down. It's always kind of fun to see the interesting patterns that are created on the flatbread on this side. And it really doesn't matter because this is not going to be our the side that we're going to see. I'm going to put this back into the oven for about 8 or 10 or 12 minutes. Depends on your oven and what you like your flatbread, how crispy you like your flatbread to be. So as I said, I did go ahead and make one already, and I'll show you what the underside of this one looks like. It's kind of interesting, right? And these are the crispy little bits that I broke off just to show you how crispy it is. So now we're at the stage, we have our flatbread. I could put this back in the oven just to crisp it up a little bit before I serve it. We have the pesto that we made, and all that we have to do now is decorate it. And I'm going to invite my daughter Caileigh on to show you how she likes to decorate it, and we'll talk a little bit about decorating the flatbread.
Thank you for the invitation. Good to be here. So what are we going to do first?
So first I like to take some of the pesto and spread it on the, well, maybe I'll do this part and then you'll do the pretty parts. So take a generous amount of pesto or a small amount of pesto, it doesn't matter, whatever your family likes. So I'll just spread it over the crust. Now this particular crust, I did not put the knives down on the parchment, so it's not as flat of a flatbread. It's got interesting waves in it, yeah, interesting waves.
This is such a good recipe. As always, my husband loves this recipe. I've made this for him and his family a bunch of times, and they cannot believe that the crust is just 2 ingredients, and they also just love the pesto and all the fresh flavors of the summer flatbread. So make sure you try this, make enough for your loved ones. I actually always make 2 at a time because you know, almost one person could eat the whole flatbread because it's quite light. So, all right.
So next up, it's, you know, I like to use arugula. Arugula is a very bitter green. You can definitely use summer greens. What do you call them? Not summer greens. Spring mix. Spring mix. Yeah. So go ahead and decorate as much or as little as you want.
Yeah.
I like to be generous with the arugula.
Yeah, my mom loves bitter greens, and I prefer more of like the sweet butter lettuce kind of greens.
We got sweet and we got bitter. I don't know what that says about us.
And then we balance each other out.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's the arugula.
And of course I would put more, but this is yours. Okay. All right. Good enough.
I'm gonna feed her arugula. Okay.
So next up, you could cut up some of the little tomatoes. I know you love tomatoes. No, we can use one of these big knives. That's fine.
These are really good tomatoes. They're or tomatoes, as you would say.
Yeah.
We got them at the farmers market this weekend, and they are just so good.
So you could cut them in half. You could cut them in quarters. It's nice if you get those little heirloom cherry tomatoes or grape tomatoes, all different colors. So just sprinkle them all over your flatbread. And then we also have some peppers that I went ahead and julienned. I have orange peppers and red peppers here. So I'm just going to sprinkle these on as well. And if there's an ingredient you don't love here, you can leave it out or replace it with something else. And we have had questions about whether this flatbread can go in the freezer. And I'm happy to report that yes, it does freeze very well. What I do is I'll cut it up in sections and then just wrap it up in some saran wrap, some plastic wrap, put it in a Ziploc bag and put it in the freezer. And when you do want to take it out and use it, you just put it back into the oven and crisp it up and then add your toppings on. But you know some fun facts about flatbread that you want to share with us.
So humans, Homo sapiens, have been cooking with fire for about 75,000 years, and there's almost every culture in the world has their own kind of flatbread, which is pretty cool. So from Ethiopia, they've got injera, which is their own kind of flatbread that's actually also gluten-free, and it's delicious. It's kind of like spongy. It's not crispy like this. And then there's flatbreads in China, there's flatbreads in India, chapati, and of course also in the United States there's a strong tradition of flatbreads as well. So most cultures have a flatbread, and this is our own variation of sort of an American summer flatbread. So colorful and beautiful, and I think what's special about this is also the use of the quinoa, which is a wonderful source of plant-based protein. It's got the full amino acid profile, and quinoa was known as Josiah Mama by the Incas, which was really the mother grain, and the Incan emperor would use like a golden instrument to break the ground of the first harvest because they had such reverence for quinoa in their culture, for all the nutritional properties and for fueling their people. So. And
talk about eating the rainbow. We have a whole lot of color going on here, and this looks pretty good. It looks really appetizing and lovely, but I like to take it a little step further and add, there's a number of different options that we could do. So this is a tofu feta that I had gone ahead and made, and it's a very simple little recipe. I could crumble some of the tofu feta over the top, and that gives the cheesy effect, which will trick the mind and trick the taste buds. We also have a few other options here, so tell us what we have.
We've also got a Brazil nut parmesan, which featured in our manicotti recipe as well, and it smells amazing. So you can just take a little pinch or a teaspoon and just sprinkle some of that on as well. And it's very, very simple. If you can't use Brazil nuts, you could also make it out of walnuts, and that's a recipe from our dinner club as well.
And adding in this Brazil nut parmesan, you know, the Brazil nuts are going to give you the selenium, which is so often missing from a vegan diet. And it also rounds out some of the G-bombs that Dr. Feldman talks about. So we have the greens, definitely all over. We have the beans, as in the tofu feta, if you were using the tofu feta. Greens, beans, onions we skipped over, but we have garlic in the pesto. Greens, beans, onions, mushrooms. I could definitely have put some mushrooms on here, but they would need to be cooked a little. And then we've got the nuts. So yeah. So this is another fun way of doing it, a much lower fat way of doing it. So you could simply take some cauliflower florets, and I love my handy dandy little box grater. You could use a regular size box grater.
I'm obsessed with like the little mini kind of kitchen gadgets. So my mom has all these fun little tools.
So yeah, show us how.
Which size would you grate?
I would use the larger size. Mm-hmm. No, that size. Okay. Yeah.
And you just grate it.
I just grate it on. So this gives the illusion of Parmesan, and as I say, it's a low-fat version of a Parmesan illusion. So
Parmesan illusion.
Parmesan.
But it really does give it just that kind of nice white color.
Yeah, and a nice little bit of flavor.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this looks great. We could take it one step further and add some sprouts or microgreens. So these are some alfalfa sprouts that we had grown in our kitchen here. I like to think of myself as a little bit of a kitchen farmer. So I grow sprouts, and then we have some microgreens that we picked up from the farmer's market.
These are so good. These are also alfalfa. So
alfalfa, yeah.
So we trim off a little bit.
Yeah, I usually cut them right from there.
And you could also do a flatbread, like if you wanted to do more of like a Mediterranean style, you could put a hummus or a tapenade down on the bottom and then put the veggies on top. You could make a Mexican style sort of pizza flatbread that's very customizable. Even like an Indian style would be pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, you could definitely, this could be a perfect pizza crust.
Yeah.
And then the piece de resistance, the part that we like to always do at the end, is add a drizzle of balsamic. The balsamic vinegar that we absolutely love and are complete converts to our California balsamic brand. I'm going to use this is a smoked hickory balsamic today, but the Gilroy garlic goes really well in here. There are a number of super...
Ooh, the 7 herb would be nice.
7 herb Italian would be good too. So I would just drizzle this over in a nice zigzag design. And that not only looks beautiful, but it's going to add a nice flavor to it. And there you have a beautiful summer flatbread. We also have our oven going off here with the second crust. So with the second crust, I'm going to cool it and put it in the freezer and save it for another day. But you can also use the same quinoa recipe and turn it into crackers. You can put some everything bagel spice over the top. Just use the crust as a cracker that you can break up and use for dipping into all sorts of things. So that's it. That's our summer flatbread.
And we know you're going to make it and love it many times. A lot of our members have made it, over 10 times. We'll see the same people making it over and over, which is so fun. So
ready to cut into it. So please subscribe to our YouTube channel. Show us what you make. Don't miss a recipe. So if you do make this, tag us on Instagram. I post as the Speedy Vegan. We also post as Vegan News Daily. So let us know how you did. And let us know if you have any questions.
enjoy your dinner.